The woman who stole the 60-year-old wealthy husband was the daughter of the husband's best friend. The big house, the company, everything is mine now. Then, the two of them had a lavish wedding overseas. However, as soon as they returned to the country and landed at the airport, the ex-husband was suddenly arrested, and I received an enraged call from his wife. The wife, who thought she would live a free and luxurious life, was stunned to learn the unexpected truth. I am currently a 53-year-old housewife. I live with my husband, who is 7 years older than me. We co-run a company together, where my husband is the president and I am the vice president. We got married about 30 years ago. It might not have seemed early back then, but by today's standards, it might be considered a bit early. We originally worked at the same company, where my husband and I were superior and subordinate. After a proposal from my earnest husband, we started dating with marriage in mind and got married after about 2 years. Our marriage, with the age gap, has been mostly free from major fights. We always have a very good relationship, respecting and admiring each other. In the company, we are known as a loving couple. Even if we disagree on business matters, everything returns to normal once we are back home. By the way, we were not blessed with children. Before I was in my 30s, we both desperately wanted children but couldn't conceive naturally. However, around the time I turned 30, my husband started preparing to establish our current company. And I wanted to start a business too, so we decided to focus on work instead of children. The company we built from scratch is still surviving and has moderately expanded. It's become famous locally, and both the number of employees and branches are increasing. Though we don't have children, we have built something important together. As the number of new employees, including fresh graduates and mid-career hires, increases every year, and we are considering nationwide business expansion, it's time to start planning for next year's business. Currently, even though we are hiring more people, our training methods for new recruits aren't as sophisticated as those of large corporations. So we hire only as many fresh graduates as we can handle at the head office. Like other companies, we tend to train new graduates starting from sales positions. However, this year, as the secretary to my husband, the president, resigned due to personal reasons, we decided to recruit someone for the secretary position. One day, a member of the HR department came to my office with an entry sheet from job-seeking students. The HR staff said, "The president was looking at resumes the other day and seemed personally interested in this woman. Do you have any connection with her?" They showed me the resume of a 22-year-old female student, the daughter of a friend from my husband's university days. That girl is the daughter of my husband's friend. It might be a coincidence. I haven't heard anything from my husband, but I'll check with him later. Although we generally avoid hiring through connections, if it's a coincidence, I thought it would be nice if she did well. So, that evening at home, I brought it up with my husband during dinner. It seems the resume of your friend's daughter was sent for the secretary position. Did HR say anything to you about it today? When I asked, my husband replied without surprise, "I understand." Actually, I was contacted after a long time by her father, asking for a favor to employ his daughter in our company. She seems hesitant about job hunting, but she's attending a good university, right? She says she'll get a secretarial qualification if she gets the job. I couldn't refuse his request. My husband's friend, mentioned in the story, is a kind and diligent person. He even contributed some money when we started our company. I met his daughter a few years ago. She seemed quiet but firm and well-grounded. Even if we hired her through connections, I wasn't planning to oppose it too much. However, I was a bit worried about entrusting the secretary's duties to her as a new graduate. The fact that she plans to get a secretarial qualification before joining is commendable. But having a qualification and being able to perform the job without any issues are entirely different. Ideally, considering the nature of the work, we should recruit a mid-career employee with extensive experience to take on the secretary role immediately. It seems that my husband shares the same thoughts, but he intends to develop measures to quickly make her an effective part of our team. As time passed, spring arrived before we knew it. The girl, having successfully graduated from university, is set to join our company as a new employee the day after tomorrow. A photo of her in traditional graduation attire was sent by my husband's friend, making me deeply aware of the approaching day when we would work together. The entrance ceremony went smoothly, and after the training period, she truly became the president's secretary. She seems to be slightly envied and resented by her peers, but she doesn't appear to be bothered by it, always arriving at work with a composed face. So far, she has not spoken about her background or the circumstances of her joining the company, and her attitude at work is as serious as that of other employees. She doesn't seem to have trouble learning, which made me think that perhaps I was too concerned about her joining us. After a year of working, she became a fully competent secretary to the president, handling her tasks efficiently. However, around that time, I started hearing unpleasant rumors about her from other employees. Apparently, she behaves very amiably towards male visitors who come to see the president, but is quite rude to female visitors. My husband, who always observes her work, was surprised by her drastic change but didn't reprimand her, deciding instead to wait and see. He occasionally gives her light warnings, but her attitude hasn't improved. I've observed her behavior at various meetings I attended, and it varies day by day. I've seen her on both good and bad days. While it's not strange for a person to have emotions and sometimes be unable to hide them, her behavior is extreme. And on days when she is in a good mood and particularly amiable, there are invariably young men among the business partners. When I felt she was being too disrespectful to our guests, I couldn't stay silent, even though my husband had also spoken to her. The president is the face of our company, and the president's secretary has a significant responsibility. However, she showed no remorse when I conveyed this. Instead, she was observed scrutinizing male visitors from head to toe, checking out their clothes and hairstyles, and guessing about their lifestyles. Initially, she only listened to my husband, but eventually, she stopped listening even to him. "I am working, so be grateful." That became her catchphrase. Sometimes she would mutter it as she passed by, or say it loud enough for me to hear. While I watched the atmosphere in the president's office gradually become heavier, I couldn't take any action. Considering the help we received from my husband's friend when starting our business. Then, about a year later, a certain employee came to my office. I recognized his face and name, but he was not a senior executive who would normally need to speak with me directly. However, he insisted on having a serious conversation with me, so I let him in to hear him out. Slowly, with a heavy tone, he began to speak. "Actually, I saw the president and the secretary walking arm in arm in the city at night." He nervously glanced at my face as he spoke, his forehead glistening with sweat. My relationship with my husband hadn't changed, and there had never been any reason for me to suspect him. But I couldn't think of any other reason why this employee would come to me looking so pale. For now, his testimony was all I had to go on. I wanted to trust my husband and my employee as much as possible. After thanking him for telling me, I sent him back to work and decided to observe my husband. Next Saturday, both of us had planned to take the day off, and my husband mentioned he would be going out in the morning. If they were indeed having an affair, I might be able to find out the truth that day. During dinner that evening, I enjoyed wine with my husband as if nothing was wrong. Then, on Saturday, my husband said he would be going out alone until evening and left the house, noticeably well dressed. If I were my usual self, I would have thought nothing of it, assuming he was just going to a fancy bar alone. After seeing my husband leave with a carefree face, I decided to follow him. He drove off in his favorite luxury car. I had previously installed a tracking device under the seat, so I could follow his car later without any issues. As I expected, my husband drove off, unaware that he was being monitored. I synchronized the data from the tracker with my car's navigation system and tracked my husband's movements. Since there wasn't much time difference since we left home, I caught up with his car quickly. Following him with another car in between, I sighed, slightly exasperated that he hadn't noticed at all. My husband stopped his car at a station's rotary, and I parked nearby to watch. The girl in question emerged from the station and got into his car. They drove off again, and I followed. Soon, they entered the parking lot of a secluded hotel. Really, it's true. Honestly, I felt no emotion, but I was somewhat excited to collect the final piece of evidence. I parked my car in a nearby coin parking and headed towards the hotel's entrance. Well, what are the two of you doing here? The unexpected confrontation left them startled. When I addressed them, both of them flinched and turned around hesitantly, clearly taken aback. Why are you here? What's going on here? As they started to panic, I explained how I had followed them that day. My husband turned pale, and the girl, red-faced with anger, had to listen as I decided to confront them. Right. I want to talk, but we shouldn't trouble the hotel staff. Shall we find a nearby cafe, or shall we just rent a room here? My husband, still pale, checked for a vacant room. The girl, protesting, had no way to escape as I was blocking the entrance. We entered a hotel room, an unusual gathering of a cheating husband, his connection-hired secretary, and the actual wife. The room was surprisingly ordinary, and I got straight to the point. When I questioned their relationship, my husband remained silent, but the girl started talking. We're dating, the president and I. It's perfect, right? A capable president and his secretary, who's been managing his work well. We've been together since I joined, and now I'm pregnant with his child. Considering my husband's age, I thought it was a bit too much. But seeing them together in a hotel made it hard to disbelieve. The girl confidently revealed their relationship, probably boosting my husband's unwarranted confidence. He began to make weak excuses, saying things like, I always wanted a child, so when she became pregnant with my baby, I thought it was fate. I wanted to point out that he was the one who had given up on having children to focus on the business. But if she was really pregnant, it wasn't just a matter of breaking them up. The big house, the luxury car, the lavish lifestyle, all will be mine. How does it feel to have your millionaire husband taken away? Sorry, not sorry. The girl taunted me like a villain from a comic book. I felt a strong indignation at being mocked. With the evidence gathered, I decided to cool down and return home. My husband seemed to want to say something, but what excuses could he possibly make? Later, I called the employee who had informed me of my husband's affair to my office to report back and thank him. I told him how I wasn't as upset or tearful as he might have expected, and that I planned to make my husband pay dearly. As I had told him, I had already prepared to punish both my husband and the girl. I spoke with the company's legal advisor and got a referral to a divorce lawyer. I planned to ask for a high amount of compensation and a share of the property, including the house. Of course, the foolish husband wasn't my only target. I also had plans to punish the girl who looked down on me and always had a snide attitude. As planned, I demanded a significant amount in compensation, and made both my husband and the girl sign an agreement before the divorce was finalized. I never publicly discussed the reasons for my divorce, but somehow the word got out that it was due to my husband, the president, having an affair with his secretary. The two of them were so absorbed in their own world that they didn't notice the disdainful glances from others. Eventually, my ex-husband became completely subservient to her, leading to the resignation of many longtime company executives and competent employees who had once believed in him. A month later, I received a postcard from my ex-husband and the girl, stating they had officially wedded overseas. The card also mentioned their plan to return and earn enough to pay me the compensation in one lump sum. The tone of the message, condescending and annoying, was undoubtedly hers. I admit their wedding and venue abroad were impressive, but I was certain their happiness wouldn't last long. The very next day, they returned. But instead of settling into marital bliss, the girl frantically called me. "Wait, what do you mean he's been arrested?" She was in the throes of a panic, screaming incoherently, her words a jumble of shock and disbelief, unable to form a coherent sentence. "Oh, you didn't know anything about it?" As I replied with a confident, almost triumphant tone, she was momentarily at a loss for words. "What? What do you mean?" she asked tentatively. Her voice, usually more assertive, sounded lower and more cautious over the phone. "Well, my ex-husband has been arrested for insider trading suspicions." Yes, in fact, my husband had realized that employees were leaving the company, and its management was beginning to falter. Before the announcement of the company's worsening performance, he had been encouraging personal acquaintances who were shareholders to sell their stocks. The discovery of the secret insider trading was not something I orchestrated. In fact, I first learned about it when the police contacted me out of the blue. I had to undergo questioning at the police station, but since I was not involved, I was able to return home quickly. It was surprising how my ex-husband had become so morally lax, engaging in affairs and illegal trading. I always had a hunch he was unreliable, especially when I had to warn him numerous times about potentially letting slip critical information about the company's declining performance. Perhaps because I spoke with such normalcy, the reality of the situation seemed to hit the girl even harder. Without me to keep him in check, my ex-husband quickly resorted to insider trading. During the police questioning, I was treated as a person related to my ex-husband, and I had suspected that even without my involvement, he would likely be arrested eventually. He was arrested and detained, shattering his newlywed life with his young wife. Even in this dire situation, he sought to protect himself, asking for a lawyer I had arranged during our divorce, showing his self-serving nature. Needless to say, I had no intention of listening to or helping him in any way. After the divorce, I immediately established a new company. When I reached out to the employees who had left my ex-husband's company, many joined as valuable assets, ready to contribute immediately. My company began to thrive, benefiting from not only the reduced living expenses without my ex-husband, but also from the influx of both former employees and clients of his failing business. This allowed for quick expansion. Ultimately, my ex-husband was prosecuted and found guilty in a criminal trial, resulting in hefty fines. No longer the president of his company, he was forced out with nothing but the clothes on his back, leading to the company's bankruptcy. Months passed, and one day, I spotted a man and a woman arguing in a food court. The man appeared to be past retirement age, and the woman, seemingly of his daughter's age, was visibly pregnant and angrily berating him. The man stood there in dirty clothes, looking dazed and barely responding to her insults, almost as if he didn't even recognize her. Suddenly, the woman noticed me. She approached me aggressively, yelling that she was returning this useless old man to me, causing a scene. Yes, the couple at the food court were my ex-husband and the woman he had married. I was a bit surprised, but since I had no more ties with him, I calmly called the staff. They were already causing a scene in the food court, so the staff called the police on them for disrupting business. They were quickly taken away by the police. I only heard through rumors, but later on, she gave birth to a girl. However, their life seemed to be in dire straits. With my ex-husband barely able to work and her caught up in childcare. They were apparently struggling significantly. After the company's bankruptcy, my ex-husband lost almost all his assets paying compensation, damages, and fines to me. He seemed to have become reclusive, spending his days idly at home and often getting scolded. As for me, I'm working as a solo entrepreneur for the first time. But with the help and support of those around me, I'm leading a fulfilling life.